The media is facing all kinds of challenges. Firstly, people hate them. See? According to Monmouth polling, 77% of people believe major media outlets at least occasionally report fake news, up from 63% who said that in 2017. And yes, 89% of Republicans think that, but so do 61% of Democrats. There is a lack of trust across the board, and it is getting worse. Get this, 26% of people think that fake news is accidental or the result of poor fact-checking, but 42% think that mainstream media intentionally make up fake news to push their agenda. Whoa. So what's the next step after that? In a YouGov poll last year, 45% of Republicans said courts should be able to shut down news media outlets that publish biased or inaccurate news. And the general public weren't much better. 28% of them agreed. And this is the big number. Only 29% of the public were explicitly opposed to shutting down newspapers. So much for free speech. Shut up! And why not shut the media down? According to 51% of Republicans, the media is now the enemy of the people. Now, I know what you're thinking. Trump. And he's sure not helping. But it's not all his fault. Gallup pollings noted a consistent drop in trust in the media for decades. In fact, trust has gone up a bit under Trump. People just hate the media. The next problem is polarisation. News consumers are increasingly being split to different camps, but the way it's happening might surprise you. A 2016 online study found that surprisingly the vast majority of Republicans and Democrats are not polarised, and they generally read centrist news websites. But when you look at the total clicks, that all changes. All of a sudden, there's a big mountain of clicks on the far right for Republicans and a mountain range of clicks on the far left for Democrats. You see, the very small number of super polarised people are high-volume consumers. They do a lot of clicking, and they're the ones who generate the profit. So even though the vast majority of people don't want polarised news, that is exactly what they are increasingly going to get. Next, newspapers don't make any money. Between 2000 and 2013, advertising revenue for America's newspaper industry fell from $63 billion to $23 billion, and I'm sure you can guess where it went. This is the newspaper industry's advertising revenue going down, and this is Google's ad revenue going up. Meanwhile, in 2016, total weekday circulation for daily newspapers, both print and digital, recorded its 28th consecutive year of declines. Add that all up, and you get newspaper employment plummeting from 412,000 to 174,000 jobs in 15 years. And these days, over 20% of those jobs are in New York, Washington, or LA. Well, what about the local newspapers? There's a plan for them too. Local newspapers are cheap for private equity firms to buy. They then juice the paper's profit margins by cutting staff. Then they load the paper up with a bunch of extra debt, which prevents the paper from reinvesting its profits. So then the paper's coverage starts to suffer, their circulation drops further, and they become unattractive for other buyers. In other words, the paper folds. Finally, there's the government's obsession with leaking. Like under the Obama administration. When the Justice Department spied on Fox News reporter James Rosen, they collected his telephone records, they tracked his movements in and out of the State Department, they seized his personal emails, and they accused him of breaking anti-espionage law, all because he reported on a leak. The current administration is still talking about going after WikiLeaks. Ow! This isn't even rotten! This just hurt! And prosecuting WikiLeaks matters. Because remember...
Should folks be concerned that this would also open up news organizations like CNN or the New York Times to prosecution?
That's speculative, and I'm not able to comment on that.
Well, that's reassuring. Can you just go away? Q&A is down the corridor, okay? Just go.
Q&A.
Sorry, Tony. Look. It's not all bad for newspapers. While 58% of old people like watching their news on TV, 42% of young people actually prefer to read their news, especially online. This has led to a renaissance of young people reading their election news from major newspapers such as the New York Times, Washington Post, USA Today and Wall Street Journal. So even in a tough advertising environment, the New York Times is still enjoying $1 billion of subscription revenue. But spare a thought for the smaller papers and try not to let the hatred get out of... Excuse me, auto cue.
Degenerate filth!
God, not you too!
Yeah, we hate you too.
What? Oh, come on!
Yeah, I'm kind of with them too, I must say. I just...
You are just as much a part of the news media as I am.
That's probably why I drink.